Welcome everyone. This is a fun tutorial for a sketchbook or journal entry that is super fun to make, and it doesn't take a really long time. I'm going to be doing this today in my Ucreate Sketch acid-free paper sketchbook. It has pretty moderately sized weight paper, so we're not going to do a whole lot of uh, heavy paint, heavy wet material. We're just going to keep it kind of moderate today, and I can show you some beginner um, techniques to some maybe intermediate ones. And we're going to get started. I'm going to show you the tools I'll be using, and I'm also going to list everything in the description box below. So I'm starting out with some really cool scrapbooking paper. This is a double-sided, which is always great because it gives you lots of options to use. And just kind of showing you what kind of theme we're going for today, and it is travel. I really like this print here. I like the colors. It looks kind of retro, kind of vintage. It's got some really cool pattern on the back and keeping with that same kind of color. So usually when I start, I like to pick out kind of the color, the mood I'm going for. And I really like these butterflies and the accent travel accent on the word travel, and also a couple of other little motifs on this paper as well. And what I like to do, I like to kind of put everything starting out, kind of put it on the paper, kind of collect the colors that I want to use. This kind of sets your mood. So this is a pearlescent color. I got this at Target. These are so affordable, super easy to get, and I just love the pearlescent color, and I love that it matched this, and this was so random. I just kind of saw this color paint and saw this paper, and I thought this is perfect. And that's kind of just a great way to get started. Just kind of finding what you have, and it's amazing what you can put together. Even when you think you don't have a lot of supplies, you actually can make something great. And so this is my first time using this Target paint as well. It's very glossy. And I'm just kind of cutting out the paper that I want on my scrapbook paper and putting it down on the page. Now I like to use both pages when I use the sketchbook. It's a pretty good size, but just using one page just kind of, I like to have a full view, like to have a full painting or creation or whatever I'm gonna do. So I'm looking at some pictures, some that I may not use, some that I may use, but I just cut it out just to kind of see where I'm going. This kind of gives me an idea of the size that this whole journal page is going to be. And usually when I do a journal page, that means both pages, right and left. So I'm cutting out this plane. I don't necessarily like that picture per se, but I do like the pattern on the back. So I cut it out, whether I use it or not. If I do use it, if not, I always have another project in mind, so it'll just be saved for later in my paper pile. And I think most of us scrapbook and journal and mixed media artists, I think we all have a collection of this paper. So that kind of goes off to the side. And what I like to do is kind of look at my items. Now, a focal point, I always try to pick like one piece that I know is a focal point. So I am in love with these Tim Holtz, excuse me. They're kind of like decals. They're not really sticky, but they're not just like a transparency. It has a little bit of tack, and it's super cool because it's textured with doesn't have any color, but you can do a lot of media on this. So you can paint on it. You can put modeling paste, different types of different paste and textures with it. There's so much you can do with it. The only thing with these is they just don't take wet water-based, um, some water-based colors do not adhere well to this. I would definitely recommend using alcohol based or paints. And here's some Tim Holtz ink dyes, kind of keeping with that patina of vintagey, retro kind of look that these kind of prints were done in. And I just love these colors, kind of like an old newspapery color, which is one of my favorite colors to work with. Just nice and neutral, and you know, you can do so much with it. So I kind of lay it on the page and I kind of get an idea. And here's some other very inexpensive paints from Castle. These are also, you can buy those on Amazon. These are great to use on this type of textured decal. This would be great, something like that. Um, or the alcohol ink sprays that I showed you. I'm also going to be using, now these are a little more ink, the inks are a little more intense. These are water-based, non-toxic markers from Amazon. I'll also link those in the description as well. Again, I picked my colors that go with my color palette that I'm using. Instead of just having all the colors in front of me, this helps me stay in the flow when I'm creating, because if I have all kinds of colors everywhere, it's easy to get distracted, and then I kind of just lose the flow I'm in. So I just noticed, like, over the years, this really just helps me. So I get my colors together. I also like to get together any kind of elements that I'm going to be using to transfer images, or anything like inks and stamps. As you can see up at the top, I'm going to be using butterfly stamps because those go with the theme of the travel. And so what I'm starting off doing, I'm shaking the acrylic paint, and this is a brand new bottle. Just like to get it nice and shaken, and I know it's not going to be dried or anything like that, so good to go with that. And then once I crack open that bottle of new paint, you know, if I know I'm just doing a solid color, I won't have to be mixing and dipping brushes. I just pour it right on the page. It eliminates waste, and it just keeps one extra thing of cleanup from having to do. So I just go right in. I just take a flat brush, very inexpensive. It's like those brushes you can buy in a big pack. Again, nothing expensive, nothing fancy. I mean, unless you really want to go for the really expensive brushes, you can do anything with pretty much with these cheap brushes, just when you're doing like journal pages and things like that. They are excellent. I also want to point out, I'm just kind of getting started moving the paint around, but I will be putting paper underneath of those pages. Like I said, the paper isn't super heavy to be doing heavy wet distressing with. It's not tissue paper thin either, so it really, you know, you can put a little bit of wet element on it, texture, but I definitely, if you use the sketchbook, I definitely recommend, if you're going to be using wet media, especially paint, and covering the surface, I'm just kind of going over it, kind of getting it all on there. But then I definitely recommend putting something under it, whether it's newspaper, scrap paper, whatever you've got. It doesn't matter, as long as you don't mind it getting paint on it, because then you can go all the way to the edges. You don't have to worry about it getting all over your table, and it just makes life so much easier. I'm all about easy cleanup on art projects, because your hands get messy enough, but you don't want your table messed up. So look at that beautiful gloss. Okay, I just take a hair dryer, and I definitely recommend getting a hair dryer that you designate just for your art. You can even get a really cheap hair dryer for like $2 or $3 at the thrift store. Don't use your good hair dryer, because then you're going to be sad if paint splashes all over it or ink spills on it. And trust me, this hair dryer has seen it all. So it's just an old hair dryer I designated for art only, and it gets tossed in the art stuff. It works perfect. Okay, now that the paper is dry, I like to go on the back and kind of feel it from the back, and sometimes I'll put the hair dryer on the back too. Okay, so now I'm looking at my stamps, and I realized I had a set of the exact same stamps. I must really love these butterflies. I'm using the Gold Brilliance stamp, and I'm also using Crafters from Colorbox. the black ink from them. So I'm just kind of going around, seeing again, measuring the page, just kind of viewing it, just kind of eyeballing it. It really helps. And I'm just kind of checking the flexibility and the dryness of the paper here. It's so glossy and pretty. It is the perfect beach glass green color. It's just beautiful. It's definitely a blue green, and it's just perfect. So now I'm taking my focal point element, which is my hot air balloon. Very cool. I'm seeing kind of where I want to place it. You definitely want to place things in their dry state before you start using any ink or paint or anything like that. Whoops. And the ink, just shake those up really well too. Get all the pigment mixed up, and just I kind of hold it up to my color palette, kind of focal point picture. So it's perfect. It's in that shade of those butterflies on there. And I love these paint. I've had these spray dyes forever. They last forever. They're just exceptional quality. Now I will say that definitely when you use these sprays, make sure you have a guard underneath that, because of course, you know, mist does spray everywhere, and you do not, these are, you know, inks you don't want on your table everywhere. So definitely I recommend putting a scrap page down, and I just lightly spray. I kind of hold it up about 6 to 7 inches from the page, so it kind of gives dimensional splatters, some big, some little. I kind of just lightly spray them, and then I go back in with my dryer immediately, because thing I learned with this is that these gloss paints with ink, it does have it's very, very glossy, so it does smear a little bit, which gives, if that's the kind of look you want, which I do, that is perfect. But if you don't want any kind of smudging, if you don't want workability, definitely go with matte. Don't use gloss with those sprays, because they will just smear. It doesn't matter how much you use the dryer. So now I'm just placing my super cool decal down, and I love the way it's centered. I love it. Looks like there's a butterfly in there, kind of helping it lift off. It's just, it's perfect. It's and I didn't even plan it that way. That's why I just love being in the creative flow, because things just, they just work out. They just always seem to just work out beautifully. And that butterfly right there came out perfect, and it was a perfect place to center my hot air balloon. So I'm just kind of going over it lightly, pressing it down on the paper, and now I'm going in with a gold Sharpie. This isn't a metallic gold Sharpie, it's more like an antique gold Sharpie, and because Sharpie is permanent ink, it will adhere to plastics, which is kind of what this material feels like. Kind of like a soft silicone plastic, but very, very thin, like, you know, like a car decal sticker, but thin and very pliable. So I'm just kind of going around on that, just kind of creating a little bit of dimension. And since this is a focal point on the page, I'm just kind of going around the edges and just kind of giving it a little bit of shade, a little bit of shadow, and just a little bit of pop, because I really want you to be able to see that. And so I love this color because it works perfect. It's not too metallic gold like a new gold. It's like an antique gold, which just fits perfect with the look of this page. So I'm just kind of going around on the strings of the balloon, and it's really cute. There's like a man kind of sitting in the basket, which I really love, and just kind of accenting that. I don't really worry about a lot of heavy detail, because it's the hints of color that I think gives it intrigue, gives it to mystery. If it was all perfectly colored and drawn in, because there's so much detail in the decal itself, you just giving it a little bit of color, just I think just gives it enough warmth. That's the look I was going for this page. But these are amazing. You can do any kind of look with these. I definitely highly recommend getting one of these Tim Holtz decals. And I will link everything or websites below. Usually pretty much everything you can find on Amazon or on art sites. So I will definitely do that. Now I'm just kind of, again, just using a rag, kind of blending and touching very lightly just to give it an aged look. I'm not pressing super hard. And now I'm going back in with my gold stamp that I did the butterflies with. And I am just kind of touching around the edges and just making sure that that looks good. And I'll kind of go back more over what I did with the butterflies and how I stamped those in. Okay, now I am using one of my markers that I picked out. I'm kind of just coloring over that. And even though these are water-based, they do have a lot of, they're highly pigmented. They do have a little solvent, I believe, which helps them stick a little bit better. And so they seem to work. Again, they are not super vivid. They're just enough to where it gives a hint of color. And that is exactly what I wanted. Just shading, just, you know, antique newspaper that's been in a box somewhere, you know, and you stumble upon this incredible picture. Now I'm using a brownish orange, again kind of staying in that brown tone family, giving it a little more depth and coming around the side, making sure I remember which sides, if you're doing like a light and shade, if you're doing that, just kind of keep in mind where your shadows are and where your lights are, you know, where the sun would be hitting on that. You don't want it just one solid shade. You want it to look like it has some light source to it, which brings the depth of the roundness out as well. And now I'm kind of carrying that over into my paper. Again, I'm just kind of touching it through, kind of blending it in. Again, because the gloss kind of makes it very easy to maneuver. That's why I really love doing a gloss base if I'm doing colors that I know I want to have blended. Gloss is your friend, because even if you're not super perfect with blending, if you use a gloss and you use anything on top of it, it will help you blend those colors easily, versus a matte, it just kind of sticks. These just kind of give it a natural airbrushed kind of look, and that's what I love. That's what I was kind of going for. And then now I'm going over to this page. Even though I dried it with the dryer for a while, do you see how it still has some workability, blendability? This is amazing. This gives you so much time to work in what you want. You know, this gives you so much time to create the kind of look. If you're going for a distressed or rust or weathered or whatever look you're going for that requires just softness, but you want texture and tone, this is the place. And I'm telling you, just this Target paint is so wonderful. It is beautiful. The pigment is great for the price. You just can't beat it. I can't recommend this enough. And they have so many colors at Target, and so you can, your possibilities are endless. You know, you can mix the colors that they have there and make your own shade. So it's a lot of fun. And the blue, I wanted to give like a sky appearance because I knew I was going to be putting in clouds. So definitely I knew I wanted to go with blue. Now I'm taking my blue marker just going in. This is kind of like the appearance of a cloud. And I'm just kind of pushing in some pretty blue in there. And again, I'm going to do the same technique. Once I'm not pressing hard, I'm just giving it a cover. And then I'm going to go back in after I've covered everything, because it looks like it's beating up, because it's, you know, it's not going to all adhere. I go back in with my rag and touch it and get the pigment pushed in, but it's feathering, you know, it's light, so it's going to not be so heavily pigmented. You know, I want it to be looking very light and worn, like from the weather. I don't want, like, I just went in and colored it with a marker. And again, for the man in his little basket, I love that little man. I'm just kind of going in and touching his coat and hat. Those are such a cool little focal point, and I just love it. So I'm just giving it a little bit of hint so it draws your eye to it, but you don't have that solid looking like you just drew it out of something else or just stuck a sticker on there. It actually looks like something that was, you know, maybe put into plaster and then kind of wearing away from the weather. I love that look. That's what I wanted. This is what I wanted for this piece, for this journal page. So just kind of going in, and you can use a rag, but also I didn't have any right beside me, but Q-tips are also your best friend. Q-tips are one of the best art tools, so inexpensive, and really can help you with projects like this when you have tiny little areas, and I'm kind of showing you how the shimmer looks on that. So yeah, so now I'm going to be going in, and I love this gold gel pen. It was bought in a pack of like 8, I think, again, from the Dollar Tree. You don't even have to go and get super expensive gel pens. I mean, you can go to the Dollar Tree and get gel pens that work just great. You don't have to spend a ton of money, because this is your flow, this is your art. So, you know, a lot of people starting out, they may want to try different techniques, and sometimes you see people doing projects and it just looks like it's going to cost a fortune. It really doesn't have to cost a fortune. It is just so, the Dollar Tree has some really great art tools sometimes, and I recommend definitely checking out like the school supply aisle. It's fantastic. So yeah, I got a pack of gel pens for $1, and the gel in it is fantastic. Works well. I didn't have to go out and buy a $7 Posca pen. I just went right in and just filling in the butterfly, because I still, even though I want it to look like it's in the balloon, kind of, that the balloon is almost kind of sheer and the butterfly is still kind of able to shine through, even though, you know, it looks like she's in there with the balloon, and still give her some sheen, make her look magical, like she's golden, but not too overly colored in and filled in. It's just kind of very, it's just blocking in those points on her wings just to give it shimmer and just to give her some shine and just create this magical look on this page that I'm going for. And so I just took the gel pen and just went all through there. Now, on the recessed areas where there are dips in the balloon, that made it really easy to go in with this gel. I wasn't sure if that would work, but it did. It did. So again, I'm just trying to give the balloon some shine, a little bit of sparkle. Even though I ran around with that Sharpie gold, now I'm giving it a little bit. And again, this isn't like a super bright gold. This looks like a, you know, an antique kind of weathered gold, which ended up being perfect. So I'm just kind of going in filling in that just around the sides to give it sparkle, to give it shine, and down on the rope pulleys to the basket the man is sitting in. I'm doing that. I mean, you could really just go wild, do gold and all the butterflies on there, but I just wanted the balloon with that one butterfly to be my focal, and just kind of the other butterflies just kind of, be toned down and kind of just significant to the page, but, giving focus to that beautiful butterfly in the balloon, floating around, and just kind of creating a magical kind of, dreamy picture. And I knew that's what I wanted. And I wasn't sure. I just knew I wanted those colors, the blues, golds, browns, and I knew I wanted butterflies, and I knew I wanted it to signify travel, because I love to travel. I am a traveler at heart, and that I just wanted to draw something that sparked joy. So that's what I picked. I just kind of went with my flow. And I definitely recommend, because I think a lot of us artists tend to overthink, and when we see so many things, we don't know where to start. And I just definitely recommend just picking up something that sparks joy, whether it's a picture, a postcard, or anything, and then just go from that. And then the next step is picking your colors. So pick the colors that you know that you're going to want to work with. Instead of putting unless you want to work with all the colors, pick a good range, like 6 to 10 colors, and just keep it at that. And when you start that, I'm telling you, that just has changed my artistic flow when I'm creating. I know some people are streamlining their, but me trying to keep track and thoughts of when I'm looking at every single art supply, it was just so hard for me, and then I'd feel overwhelmed and sometimes wouldn't even do art. So I'm kind of going back in with the blue, just giving it a little bit extra dimension. This is a different blue color. I just wanted a little bit of extra pop on those clouds, just because they just look so cool, and I just wanted to do something with them. And it kind of draws your eye down to the little man sitting in the basket. So yeah. So now I'm just kind of going back in, kind of just touching up the page, kind of taking a look at it. This is where I knew I wanted to add clouds. Now I always keep scrap paper, keep the backings from your art supplies, because I cut those into stencils. I use every single thing that art supplies are packaged in, because it can be repurposed. I just cut some clouds. Now these aren't perfect clouds. I wanted abstract, dreamy clouds. I just wanted them to be very bulbous and kind of just not uniform, just look very dreamy. So I'm going in, I'm using my airbrush. I'm going in with my golden titanium white, high flow. This is great for airbrushes. Now you don't have to use an airbrush. You can use a rag and pat it like this around. You can use a cosmetic sponge. You can even use a cotton ball. You don't have to use an airbrush. I just love airbrushing. You can even do this with atomizers, with your spritzes. Just the heavier lines stay closer to the cutout, and the farther away you move, the lighter it will be. There's lots of options for clouds. You don't have to use airbrush. I just love airbrushing. I've been doing it since I was a teenager, and it's one of my favorite tools to work with. So I just went in and I used, and it'll pop up what kind of blues that I used. So I used a jacquard blue, the titanium white, and I also used Dr. P.H. Martin inks. Those are my favorite. Those are water soluble as well, but intense, beautiful colors. So I'm just going in, just airbrushing lightly. Again, this is just a piece of scrap, nothing fancy. You can buy cloud stencils if you don't if you want to be, more precise with it. And see, I even cut little pieces like this out, and made a little cloud shape like that. Again, it's just to give you the feeling of clouds. So now, here's a little glimpse of what I use. So there's the titanium white, that's the PH Martin, and the Jacquard blue. And so now you can see that I have abstract, dreamy clouds. That's the look I was going for, and I know that when you first spray, when you airbrush, it kind of comes out a little intense, but once it dries, it's perfect. So it's just when it's wet, it's a little more intense, but the dry down, it created the perfect shade of blue, just like the marker that I used. I just wanted a pretty, beautiful, dreamy looking blue cloud, just very light and nothing too heavy. And again, I just cut out shapes that were just roundish, ovalish shapes. Nothing, if you held that up, it probably wouldn't even look like a cloud, maybe. But then when you layer it, you go in different directions. You don't want to go in a straight line. You want to use both sides. So turn it one way and then flip it around, turn it the other way. Also use your negative spaces, which is the cutout, the positive spaces, which are the solid pieces like that. That is going to create the illusion of the fullness of the cloud. You don't want to do it in a straight line all the way across, because that will not give you a feeling of airiness that clouds are. It's going to look uniform, and it's going to look, just like a straight line across of a shape. Doing your stencil in different areas, that's what you want. Now, I love little envelopes and journals. I love keeping little keepsakes and little secrets and notes. I took this envelope that I had. It was just sitting in a pile of cards, but it was so cool because it was gold and brown, and it had that cool antique with the hot air balloon on it, and it was perfect. So I just used my Doris tape runner and just glued the back. I always do 4 corners and then a slash down the middle. Then you have a little envelope. You can keep secrets, tickets, whatever you want. I love pockets. I just love them. And so I also add washi tape, which gives it a cool look. These are from 7 Gypsies. I've had this for quite a while, but I love their tape. It is super strong. The black one, especially with the white writing, is a very heavy duty. So I keep those for very special projects because it's not a big roll. So yeah. So there's the back, and you saw where I glued it with the tape runner. And so this is the Doris. This is one of my favorite. I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the middle. So that's it. And now finally I'm going in. This is a Fine Tech. This is highly pigmented metallic watercolor, and I know this isn't going to stick completely, but it is going to add some pigment in there, some sparkle in there, just enough to give it a little bit of shimmer. I don't want anything off the top crazy, but I just added it to the balloon. Again, it just gives it a little more. It's going to stick to the other Sharpie and things like that, so it's going to have a little bit of a foundation, a base. I wouldn't just go right in on top of this decal plain. It wouldn't stick that well. It just wouldn't. But the reason it's going over top of the marker Sharpie that's already there is going to give it a little bit of base to stick to. I also cut out that "get out there" thing from the other part of that scrapbook paper. I just liked that saying, and it kind of looked like a ticket too. So I thought, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be perfect for my balloon. So again, I just used tape runner on the Doris tape runner on the back of that little cutout from that same scrapbook page. Because I totally deconstruct my scrapbook paper. I really do. I just cut it all out. And then I just added some of that pigment right onto that little ticket. Giving it a little bit of, just a little bit of something, a little bit of aging, but not anything too crazy. It's going to make the paper look like it's worn. It's going to make the paper look a little bit, old. It's perfect. And it's going to give it texture, which is exactly what I wanted. I just added a little bit of the Seven Gypsies tape to kind of make it look like I kind of just was adding something onto the balloon, and just to give it extra dimension. It's just, I love it. I just love the texture of that washi tape, and I haven't found many washi tapes that do that. So it tied in with the black and white butterflies, and again, I'm just kind of taking that ink. I just kind of just lightly smear it over. I'm just kind of working it in. I'm always working in some colors that I've used in the page. And there it is. There it is. I'm going to leave it and let it sit and dry, and let all the inks dry and the glues, and let everything just kind of settle. And I'm not going to take a hairdryer to it a lot. I just do it to kind of start working on the next piece. But finished products, I always leave them open to dry fully. That way it just has it creates a nice flat surface. I don't let it sit on anything but a table that's flat, because you definitely want your pages to dry flat if they are wet. You don't want them to wrinkle and warp. So this sketchbook it's a great price. It's got a lot of paper in it, and there's the finished product, everyone. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and come back soon. Bye for now.